Hello and welcome to the Buckets and Tea NBA show. I'm your host, Cathryn Naiker. Thanks again for tuning into this week's episode. Today, joining me, one of my favorites, it's Basketball Feeling Zone, Katie Heindl. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I just had to glance up because this giant bird just landed outside the window. I'm doing
an
great.
Ominous presence.
Yeah,
Okay.
an ominous presence of I want to say, is it a cardinal? Anyway, I'm doing well. It's always a pleasure to be joining you on this show. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. You know, you're a very busy person. I've been trying to have you back many times, which is fine. You deserve to be so busy. I think the last time you were here was like the heart of the Kyrie Irving madness back in November. So a lot's happened since then. You know, we're thick into the playoffs. I want to start talking about this Lakers-Warriors series. I am so excited for this series. I think like it kind of dawned on me as it was starting how like important this rivalry is to me for some reason. Like this LeBron Steph Curry rivalry and how like, you know, we didn't think we'd necessarily see them again in the playoffs against each other. And here we are. It could be one of the last times. By the way, I'm sick. I'm not getting choked up. I'm like legitimately like swallowing a cough right now. I'm not choked up.
It's fine if you were.
No, that would be so funny though if I was. No, I'm legitimately just swallowing a cough right now. But and I might have to mute my mic from time to time. It sounded like I said nuke it. Damn.
Oh no.
Oh, I missed it. Sorry, some coughs are going to sneak in. Shout out to anyone who listens to the Pickup WNBA podcast because I coughed throughout that whole madness. That came out today, which is Thursday. So shout out to you. Thank you. But yeah, okay, Katie. Everyone's been talking about this series about it being, you know, the bigs versus the smalls. Where do you land on this?
The bigs versus the smalls? Really?
Yeah, well, basically it's Anthony Davis versus like a bunch of people shorter than him.
That's true. That's funny. I guess the Warriors are pretty little.
They're pretty little.
They're pretty little. So I think I'm pretty excited for it. I was like, kind of came into it on equal footing. I was like, I don't actually know that I have a favorite, but that very quickly was revealed to me that this is so strange, but I'd like for the Lakers to advance.
Ooh.
Only because what you mentioned before, which is just seeing LeBron James back in this position again. And honestly, how cool that is. And also the fact that he got this, like, frankly, janky team that started the season in a very different form than it is now.
Yeah.
How he's led them now through these two, first the play-in, then against the Kings. Just to see that somebody like LeBron is still able to put a team on his back like this, you know, and turn it on. And like, I know that's tapering off, not delusional as he gets older, but it's still a very cool thing to see. And I also like the idea of him knowing the Warriors' weaknesses. I mean, I guess I have still a chip on my shoulder from when the Raptors Warriors series, you know, but just being able to like really annoy and frustrate somebody like Draymond, even watching him kind of figure out stuff on the fly. Though those two obviously have a lot of respect for each other, it's just still very fun to see how they kind of match up on the floor. So it's wild because it's like, I'm not a Lakers fan, but this matchup has made me lean harder into LeBron James fandom, if only because it's like, I don't know how many more of these, you know, we get.
Yeah, I feel like I know a lot of people who aren't necessarily Lakers fans, but they're definitely like LeBron fans. And I feel like a lot of Raptors fans are LeBron fans because we watched him beat us up for so many years.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people in Toronto, specifically Raptors fans, do lean heavy towards LeBron on the GOAT conversation because we just watched him beat us up for so long, where we didn't see that with Michael, at least not in real time. So, yeah, I think that's very interesting. I'm feeling like old and nostalgic, and I'm feeling like I'm personally rooting for the Warriors.
Okay.
But I've been wrong about absolutely everything this playoffs. I've just been wrong about everything.
It's been like an exciting playoffs. I'm sure lots of people have been wrong, you know?
Oh yeah, most people's brackets are just on fire. But yeah, like I just feel like it is incredible that we get to see LeBron do this. And then, I mean, I don't know about their chances against the Nuggets, but that feels like the hardest out. Personally, I pretty much have no respect for the Eastern Conference this year in the playoffs. I think the champion is in the West. I think the finals is going to be a very short series, no matter who it is. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself here. I'm going to cough again. Sorry.
Okay. It's okay. I'll say while you're coughing that my mechanic does think it's going to be the Lakers. But the more I've actually thought about it, and I think this just has to do with how they played so far through the playoffs, is like, if they get through this round, it does not, I could see them beating the Nuggets. It's going to be a hard out, as you said, but like there's something about the Lakers as a team that they are generative of their own momentum. And once they especially LeBron, and like once they kind of hit that clip, if AD stays healthy, if LeBron stays healthy, you know, and all these other factors fall in their favor, it's very weird to just say, I could just see them back in the finals. But
look,
I picture it.
My personal trainer told me that if the Lakers get into the play-in, they're going to the finals. And I laughed at him and I mocked at him while I was on an elliptical or lifting weights many a times over. I said on this podcast explicitly, I have no belief in the Lakers, even early as like 3 weeks ago. And they just keep proving me wrong. They keep making me look like a fool. And I hate them for that. And it's not that I just need them to lose for that reason. I mean, look, Anthony Davis was extremely dominant in game one. I do think that those stats might be a little inflated because the Warriors don't have anyone to match up against him, and that is a new problem for them. And I think people are going to rank his dominance. Like, to me, if he had that level of dominance over like a center of similar size, then you're like, okay, this is a great performance. I mean, it is a great performance. I shouldn't be that down on him, but I mean, come on, he's getting everything he wants. We're just talking about game one here. Game two is going to be tonight, so this will be out there afterwards. But like, they won by 5 points. So I do think there's still hope for the Warriors.
Oh, yeah. And like, you can never discount off, obviously, like Steph's shooting, even Clay's shooting. Jordan Poole has looked like much less, it feels rude to say useless, but like certainly like a loose cannon in like the first game than he did throughout the entire Kings series. So I think, you know, and the Warriors do have like their speed kind of up on the Lakers, but it's interesting just in terms of like how equally matched they are with main character playoff experience. And I think that's something that's really like, I'm all for parity. I really enjoyed like the mess of the regular season in either conference and how it really seemed like anyone's game. And in a lot of ways it still does, right? Like, the Bucks are out. Like,
yeah,
that happened
so nuts still
very quickly, you know, like seeing the Knicks and the Heat like in still at this point. Like, there are still a lot of surprises, and that parity's brought that. But I do think it's kind of cool. We're getting these matchups of like the parity, the new class of parity, and then these sort of older, very seasoned playoff teams, or just seasoned playoff players on certain teams. But man, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to decide if it's that I doubt the Warriors or trust the Lakers more. And I don't think it's really either. I think I would just rather see LeBron advance.
Yeah, which I can respect for sure. I personally, I'm just a big Steph Curry fan. Like, I just love him and I love watching him play. Yeah. And I'm also so used to rooting against LeBron that I haven't made the switch.
Yeah.
But when he retires, whenever that is, I'm going to miss him so much. Like, I don't think I've ever enjoyed rooting against someone more than rooting against LeBron. And I don't think I ever will.
I mean,
You
he
know,
did a lot of psychic damage to,
to us.
or yeah, to us, to the to the Raptors fan base,
So, you
which
know,
I think is why I like rooting for him now, because it's like he's somebody else's problem.
right. And, you know, speaking of doing psychological damage to someone, I want to talk about Dylan Brooks because
Let's see. Yeah.
thank you. Because I think his rant against LeBron had a lot to do with the fact that he's from here. That's my theory. You know, he's from Mississauga. He grew up watching LeBron kick her butt.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know to what degree he claimed being a Raptors fan, but there's no way he wasn't.
I don't think he's ever claimed it.
But even if he didn't claim it, but as
yeah.
a kid, I'm sure he grew up watching the Raptors, at least watching our broadcasts.
Yeah. I don't know when he left. I don't know if he went to prep school or like when he left, but yeah, no, that's a good point. He definitely receives some of that psychic.
I think so. I think that's my personal theory. But so after the Grizzlies were eliminated, Shams Charania tweeted that the Memphis Grizzlies have stated that they have no intention of bringing him back whatsoever
under any circumstances.
Which is just okay. I'm gonna say this is my little controversial take, if I can say it without coughing. I think that Dylan Brooks needs an attitude adjustment, to say the least. But I also think this is a very immature response from their head office to just blatantly state that. Mm-hmm. To me, it shows that the immaturity in this team is within their entire culture, and that it is not just one player or two, and that they could come back next season and still be frat boys. Mm-hmm. Honestly, like, I don't know how much just giving up Dylan Brooks for nothing, not even attempting a sign and trade in any way. Like, that is what I find shocking. Like, why not keep that to yourself and attempt a sign and trade and just be like, look, we don't want to pay him, and just leave it at that. You don't have to make it personal. I find it confusing. No, that's all.
No, it's kind of confusing to me. I still don't think it's clear or been reported where that leak came from, because under any circumstances, that was Shams. Like, that was his own wording, which I thought, I don't know if you saw this today, but Dylan Brooks' agent.
Yeah, his agent came out to say that this isn't true. But I'm like, the Grizzlies haven't said it isn't true.
No, they haven't. The best part of the agent tweet was #weirdo at the end, directed at Shams. I thought that was very funny. Because one, who's doing hashtags? But if you're going to do it, #weirdo.
Well, who's following the #weirdo? Hoping to like engage in content.
True. The Grizzlies, I almost called them the Warriors. The Grizzlies haven't refuted it or, really acknowledged it whatsoever. I wonder if it was like another player leaking it. Like, I'm not really sure what the wording was. My understanding of it on like a more fulsome scale is that, Dylan Brooks, in some of the contract renegotiations, when he was offered like an extension and going towards the end of the season, wanted a more just a more concentrated role offensively. And the team was like, well, you don't really hit your shots right now. We can't, we can't really promise you that. So there was a disconnect there. And maybe that sounded like a little bit mutual, but all of it does just feel like this kind of, it's depending on how you feel about Dylan Brooks, either like a perfect end to this arc that he created for himself, or if you've got some sympathy. And honestly, for a moment, I did feel bad because it's a pretty strongly worded, like Shams' tweet about it.
I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, it was very strongly worded. I also hadn't seen anything like that. It seemed just so succinct and definitive, right? Like, there's no coming back from this. I know the Grizzlies have had their fair share of, just like team drama, and like there is something going on within that front office and locker room this season, and they've had to deal with that. It struck me as who's the guy they can kind of cut loose. It's never going to be Ja.
Yeah.
So
it was also, but it was
Dylan.
like, Dylan Brooks made himself an easy target to blame for this, right? Where like for all his pitfalls, I don't actually think that them being out of the first round is his fault, So I think like, I don't know, man. It's like, sure, move on from Dylan Brooks. That's great. But it just doesn't seem like it's scratching the surface of what's going to make that team better and what's going to make that team a force to be reckoned with to make a deep run into the playoffs next year. I thought they were going to make a deep run this year, even though I thought they were very immature. And that didn't happen, to my surprise, both me and my bracket. Very shocked.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like they're going to fire Taylor Jenkins, and I don't think they're going to actually make that many changes in the offseason. And it's strange to me because I guess if you want to talk about culture, Dylan Brooks was the one leading a lot of the things that the team has said that they like and, are kind of like the good chemistry things, like the dancing in the tunnel and, being the kind of hype man of the team and keeping the energy up. There's obviously stuff that they didn't like, and I think that came more to bear in the playoffs. And it might come down to what we were talking about earlier of just experience of being in the spotlight like that and knowing how to wear it on your shoulders. And, if you're going to be a heel, that's fine. Like obviously Draymond Green is a perfect example of that. You can be a heel, but you need to almost properly ration out your behavior, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't just blow it all in the first series and then like have that come back to, hit you in the butt as it did with Dylan Brooks, like targeting LeBron James. Also like pick better targets.
Well, I mean, if you're going to say all that, you need to back it up.
Yeah.
I mean, that was brutal.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I don't know. I would have liked to hear from him at the end of the season. Honestly, I don't really know. I don't even mean this as like someone in media that's like aghast at teams like the Bucks didn't do their exit interviews and Dylan Brooks didn't. Like,
I didn't realize the Bucks didn't do any exit interviews.
Yeah, they've said they're not going to.
Wow,
so
that's brutal.
Yeah, I don't mean like, it does suck for access for local reporters, 100%. It sucks that, that's your last opportunity to kind of close off the season. But specifically in Brooks's case, it would have been nice to hear from him. So I wonder if he knew that this was coming, maybe. And it's like, you don't want the last word to be some soundbite that you say in that last presser paired with this weirdly worded Shams tweet and story. You're just kind of going to let that stand on its own. And I guess then let your agent come to your defense. I don't know. The whole thing is a bit of a mess.
Yeah. I mean, for the agent to deny it without the Grizzlies denying it is also, to me, not a great look.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, it's just such a demonstrative statement to not deny. So that's how you know it's real.
Yeah, some degree of it is definitely real. I'm just, I don't know. The rest of that team seems like fairly functional. So maybe there was just something all along and they were like waiting for the opportunity to
maybe
say goodbye to him. I mean, I know a lot of Grizzlies fans are happy.
Where do you see him going next? Like what team would he be a good fit on?
I've seen the Toronto, and I've like talked about this. I've seen the Toronto discussion. I get it to a degree, but when your problem is already like inconsistent shooting, I don't really see how that solves it. It only makes that problem worse. I could see the Blazers. I could see. I'm trying to think of an East Coast team.
I think the Miami Heat would be an interesting fit for him.
Though they'd like want to whip him into shape, right? It would be very.
Yeah, but that would be the one team that could do it.
Yeah, I guess, or you wouldn't
know what I mean? Because
last very long. Yeah.
Like Riley, Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, like they're not putting up with his shit. And that's like the one team where like he'd really just have to fall in line and suck it up and deal with it, which would probably be the best thing for him.
Yeah.
I think.
If that's the case, then I would be kind of bummed that UD wouldn't be there next season.
Oh, true.
If he truly is leaving, because for those two to, if you're calling LeBron James old, then you turn around and like you've got, Udonis Haslem at the locker.
Well, he could end up having another role on the team, maybe.
That's true.
He could have a presence. Yeah.
Maybe they keep him if they get Dylan Brooks. Maybe they keep him around just for that.
Yeah, or they keep him, or they give him like an assistant job, like an assistant coaching job.
I hope they do, man. That guy rules.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely a few teams that could, and I could see wanting to pick him up. My curiosity would be what that contract looks like. I feel like it might be tentative.
Yeah, it looks like someone was saying that it's likely that he would only sign a 1-year deal because teams wouldn't want to take more of a chance on him than that.
Which is like, obviously, without going too deep into this, like so messed up, considering the length of contracts teams will give other athletes who have done far more worse and like way more impactful things in the real world, like worsely impactful things in the real world on real people's lives than just like talking trash in a basketball game. But
amen to that. Yeah, amen to that. Let's talk a little bit about the Eastern Conference. Joel Embiid won MVP, but his latest injury could be a setback once again for the 76ers. They looked not good last night in their game against Boston. What I thought was hoping would be the actual Eastern Conference Finals. But I just have no respect for this entire conference. What do you make of Joel Embiid's injury, his MVP award, and what they're up against this series with the Celtics?
I mean, there was a point in that series last night when I was like, at least there's like 2 minutes left. And I looked and I was like, 7 minutes, like just for how much of a blowout it was. That said, the times we've kind of seen these wild swings in the playoffs so far, the teams have definitely corrected the next game. And I think, the Celtics did that from the first game to this one. And I do think the Sixers will, and also will have to do that to the next one. I was actually kind of excited about this series as, being in Toronto, and the fact that usually we don't get these two teams in a matchup together. Similarly, like I was excited about Lakers Warriors. It's just like these big kind of juggernauts of their conferences that usually are facing other teams in this round now going head to head just because of how things have shaken out. So I hope it gets better. I do think it will. It kind of comes down, I don't know. Actually, I was going to say it comes down to like who wants it more. But then again, like that game one was probably the best playoff game of James Harden's entire career. Yeah. And it was thrilling to watch. Like it was so much fun to watch as like a Harden skeptic. I was very into it. That
crowd was genuinely stunned.
Yes.
When they lost that game, they were genuinely stunned.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sucks to like lose the game after you were just named MVP.
And to lose it that hard. Yeah.
It doesn't take anything away from, I don't think people should be like, use it as like a pro or a con against him getting that award at all. I think it's kind of exists in another realm. I loved watching them all gathered in that hotel ballroom.
Yeah, it was nice
to like watch the announcement and give each other hugs. And Embiid kind of choking up. Obviously, he's wanted this for a really long time. I think it's really well deserved. But then again, I also feel like most MVP discourse is just so overdone and just like overturned at this point that it loses all meaning, unfortunately, by this point. Not for the people getting the awards. It's still obviously pretty meaningful to them, but just the discussion about it. By now, you're just like, it's like when you repeat one word over and over and it doesn't make sense anymore.
Right. No, I get that. I agree. I think, how I kind of looked at it is I was fine or happy for Joel Embiid to get it this year, because I think when we look back at this era in basketball, it would make sense for Giannis, Jokic, and Embiid to have MVPs.
Mm-hmm.
So, whether it should have been this year or previous year or something like that, it's like what matters is that he's been an MVP player for several years and now he finally has the award to reflect that.
Mm-hmm.
I do think, however, like it really sucks for the Sixers, like the timing of this injury and his inability to just be consistently healthy is tough for them. There's rumors about James Harden leaving Philadelphia in free agency. I don't know. It's just, to me, I'm kind of like, if they don't win this series, where do they go from here?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think if they don't win, then James Harden probably will leave. If they win the series and don't win the next, I think it would take perhaps them winning the title. Actually, no, because I could see James Harden being like, well, I've won the title. What else could I do here?
Want to go back to Texas where I don't pay taxes or whatever.
Yeah, or to like, if that's because he wants his 1-year contract loophole before going for like this next max year contract to kind of ride out what I would imagine would be the end of his NBA career. I could see him kind of swinging either way. If they lose very badly, that's a good reason to go. If they win the title, then that's kind of a stamp for him that he's always got to go. James Harden's, it's hard to like pin down his loyalties or, what he's kind of like what his own rooting interests are, I think, from season to season. Embiid, I have softened to Embiid because I think it's really clear that he's committed to the Sixers and he wants to bring a title there and he's worked really hard to do it. It hasn't always been in the best ways. Do I think that, he handled the Ben Simmons stuff there, like the best with the most grace that he could? No, I don't. But I think he has been such a great mentor to somebody like Tyrese Maxey, and he's let somebody like that kind of rub off on him in a very cheerful way where he's not this big grumpy dude, around like Tyrese's energy. And in terms of the health thing, I do feel like that's just something the Sixers understand. It's the Lakers and AD, you want that, or the Clippers and Kawhi, you want and have invested in that person regardless of, and understanding full well maybe the caveats that come with it in terms of injuries.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I do think he's absolutely committed to the 76ers. I just feel like, I don't know who else they would get if James Harden does leave, but I feel like they might have to start looking at teams potentially making trades to upgrade the roster around him if they are going to make a deeper push. No idea who that is. I just feel like there's only so many years you can knock at the door and not get past the second round. And so, yeah, I just think it's going to be a very interesting offseason for the 76ers. And I guess I'm saying that I think Boston's going to win this series. But I think if Joel was at 100% health, we're having a very different conversation about this series. So you said you don't believe in the Eastern Conference, so do you trust the Celtics or no? No.
You just trust them in this series?
I trust them in this series.
Yeah.
I might trust them in a series, whoever comes out of the Knicks Heat. We haven't talked about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to cough again. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I like the Knicks Heat. It's I hope that becomes, I hope Jimmy gets to come back, and that goes a lot more equally. It's funny, leading up to this, in the back of my head, because the Heat, it seems like in the postseason, by the time it rolls around, they're always in such bad, banged up shape that even this season I was like, man, if only they could get healthy. And it's like, oh, wait, they are. And then Jimmy rolled his ankle.
Yeah.
I willed that in some
No, you didn't.
way. Obviously, I like seeing them stick around. That is such a sloppy series. Those two teams just love to slug it out in the muck, and I think it's very fun to watch. I don't know that the Knicks, it's tough to say if are the Knicks overachieving, or is this just quietly what Tibbs has been working them up to. And the Heat, I think, always play up. That's certainly what we've seen in the postseason.
I would say both of these teams are overachieving right now, because I can't get over the fact that the Miami Heat lost that playing game to the Hawks.
Mm-hmm.
It was a brutal loss. I thought this team was legit done.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to have to like start trading everybody or something. And then they dug deep and they found their way. And the fact that they're doing this without Tyler Hero as well.
Oh my God. Have you seen like some of I don't know if he's like a bit sad because I know he had surgery on his hand. Just go and look at his IG. His fits have been strange.
Really?
I feel like he's going through it.
Okay. You know who I think is going through it?
Who?
Joe Mazzulla.
Yes.
Because he, so Inside the NBA played a bit of his post-game press conference.
Okay.
And he looked like deranged, man.
Like you think he's not sleeping?
Yeah. Like he looked like he was just so deadpan and so like, I don't know. Like he just looked like he lacked all social skills.
Oh gosh.
And was just like, we were pissed off. We were very unhappy about the last game. I told the team to shoot more threes. That's what I did. And he was like pissed doing that. And I was like, I've never seen a coach like that impersonable. Like the body language was just like bizarre.
Was he stiff while he was saying this kind
Very
of stuff?
stiff and like angry after like a dominant win.
Yeah.
In game 2. And it was just, and yeah, it was just weird.
Man, he
gave me a weird vibe.
Yeah. That's kind of, I mean, the Celtics are a little bit vibeless. Like, I think they're certainly like a juggernaut of a team, and they've been playing this way all season, which is why, if anything, I do believe in them, because they just got like the reps essentially to ride this out if they need to. They're not very like, there's not that much personality there, even though they have some great like personality type players, you know, and like Marcus Smart, Time Lord, like those guys. But that's weird. I didn't see that post game. That makes me uncomfortable. That's
and
like
I don't know
type of like,
yeah,
that's the worst type of mad when someone is like that.
Yeah, I don't know if he's like that all the time or not. Like I haven't watched enough of him to know, but I was just like, there's something off about this guy.
He's definitely quiet. Like I've seen him do his pre and posts in Toronto, you know, in person, but
he wasn't like angry.
Never like radiating anger. No. He was just like kind of quiet and on the level.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. Oh, now I'm curious. I'm going to watch more of him and then have an analysis next week.
Okay.
Okay, Katie, we're going to have a shorter episode because I don't know if I can actually talk for a whole hour.
That's okay.
So we're going to move on to our Raptors homer moment and talk about this coaching search. So since my last episode, it came out that the Raptors requested to interview Becky Hammon of the Las Vegas Aces. A lot of talk, a lot of chatter about this, mainly positive. I think a lot of people think it would be cool for us to hire the first woman female head coach. Although Becky Hammon was interviewed by media about it and said, I'm not taking a second away from these girls to talk about them boys.
These women.
Or these women. Thank you, Katie. You know, during their training camp. So Katie, my question for you is, what do you want to see in a Raptors head coach, and how do you feel about Becky Hammon being interviewed for the job?
First, it was like so hilarious to me to see how many people had such a severe reaction to her saying that, and they were basically just like, this is why like a woman can never be a coach because there's no respect. They're men, not boys. It's like, dude, it's a turn of phrase. Like it's also just how she talks. If you've ever like heard her, I don't know. It's anyway, neither here nor there, but pretty predictable. I obviously look, I'll preface this with like at any point, at any one of these points I'm about to make, I would love to be proven wrong, which I've said before. But I'm very skeptical. I would love for Becky Hammon to be the next Toronto Raptors head coach. But I also think a lot of this discussion around it devalues the fact that she already has a job. Like I think a lot of people talk about it as if she's hard up for an opportunity or a position, whereas like she has kind of the best job, like the best job, certainly in the WNBA. She also has a job where finally, after so many years under Greg Popovich, within that very like rigid Spurs system, she can make and create and shape her own thing. And she has the full support of ownership there. You saw what they did with that new Aces arena and like the facility, not the arena, sorry, the training facilities and like super high tech. It looks like as good as the Raiders, stadium and everything.
For people who might not know, so in the WNBA, the Las Vegas Aces are the reigning champions.
Yes.
They have a super team. I believe she's the highest paid coach in the league.
She is. She makes $1 million a year, highest paid coach in the WNBA, won coach of the year. Aces won the title last season. So like she's in a fine position. Like she is not sad to continue the job that she has. So
and and she wouldn't be able to finish the season out if she takes the job because the WNBA season goes into September and then the playoffs and then the finals, which they are very much projected to make, would go into October.
Yeah.
So she would have to leave basically like just as their season starts. She'd have to bail on their whole season.
So the offer would have to be, I think at this point, it would have to be not just like come and coach our team. It would be like, we're going to give you a real stake in the creation of this team and the new direction of this team. Because like you're going to have an entirely new coaching staff. So she'd have the power to bring in, if it was Becky Hammond, she'd have to bring in all new assistants because they've started to kind of scatter to the winds as usually happens, right? Like a new head coach will usually clean house, but it's been surprising to me to see how much they're already leaving because I think there was a real rift that wasn't
with our coaches.
With our coaching, our front office, between the front office and the coaching staff, and then within the coaching staff itself. So I would love it. It really bothered me because I felt like it was another example of Becky Hammond's name just being touted by an organization that desperately wants attention and optics, because at this point, the Raptors still have only interviewed assistant coaches. I'm sure they are great assistant coaches, but they aren't like the kind of big name. So what's a good way to remedy that? You throw Becky Hammond's name into the mix. I don't even know from like a 2-day differential from how many places I saw reporting on like the Raptors head coaching search to the next day after they named, we're interviewing Becky Hammond. Every single outlet, not just in Toronto, but like, ESPN and like national outlets are like putting out a little blurb on the Toronto Raptors. So how nice is that for them? And the thing about it that bothers me is like, you're in a bit of a slump now. The Toronto Raptors are. They really underperformed. There's no plan in terms of identity and in like what's going to happen next season. You need a really strong and good head coach. And I think Becky Hammond could be that, but you're already, and as you said, like this overlaps with the W season. You're not really she's not in the best position to even take this job right now. So while I get the fit, like I've had a lot of conversations with people being like, but it's a really good fit. And it's like what they need. It's like, yeah, it's what they need, but it doesn't like none of us are making that call. And a part of me just feels like a lot of this is a bit of stalling because they probably wanted Ime Udoka and he went and took the job with the Rockets. So
yeah. And then it was crazy when he was like, oh, out of all the jobs that were available, this was the most ideal. It was like, it felt very pointed.
It did feel pointed, which to me, read between the lines, right? There is a lot going on. And again, like if Becky Hammond chooses to ever come back to the NBA, and if that is whatever time that is, there still hasn't been a head woman coach, and whoever that first head woman coach is, there's going to be they're going to be under such a microscope that they can't really make a misstep. That first person just can't. Like they will not be given the grace. It's a lot like when we started to now, thankfully, like we have so many head Black coaches in the NBA, but like when there weren't, again, it was the same thing. It's like you're seeing people under a microscope. If they make any misstep, the first thing is like, well, they're going to fire the coach instead of like, well, let's give them another season, like with a Nick Nurse or like a Coach Bud, right? Like, who are given a lot of opportunities. So, I mean, I would love it. I just really don't think it's realistic for a variety of reasons that I just said, and like just more. I also, frankly, I don't really think the front office is brave enough to do it. I really don't.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I agree with you. And I will add that, in my opinion, following Becky Hammon's career, I feel like she was really dicked around a few
Totally.
years ago, like when she was interviewing with a bunch of teams and they weren't hiring her and they were hiring less qualified people instead of her. And when I say less qualified, I mean I'm talking about 7 years as an assistant with Greg Popovich. That is enough for Budenholzer and all these other people to get jobs. Quinn Snyder, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Wait, now I'm getting confused. Definitely Budenholzer. There were some other people as well.
Oh, I'm forgetting his name. He was like the interim coach of the Hawks. He coached with alongside Becky as an assistant under Bud.
Right. So there were a lot of assistants under Greg Popovich that got coaching jobs that were not former players, that were not, one of the 25 greatest WNBA players of all time. Okay. They're not Olympians. They don't have any of those other credentials in addition to being an assistant of Greg Popovich for 7 years. And they all got head coaching jobs. And when she was interviewing for them, again, it was just all this performative BS. And I think she had had enough. And the WNBA, the Aces gave her a great offer. And she seems genuinely very happy there. So, yeah, she is not interested in being tokenized. I don't think any qualified female coach is. There are other female coaches that I think are worthy of a job in the NBA, particularly Dawn Staley, whose name does not get mentioned because it isn't, the in vogue performative thing to do at the moment. But her NCAA credentials, if she were a man, would warrant her an NBA job. Coaches have jumped from the NCAA to the NBA. I think the last one was Billy Donovan, if I'm not mistaken. So, that's happened too. And I just think like it's not just about hiring women. It's about setting people up for success. And it's like, why would you jump into a situation just for the sake of being the first person to do it if you're not actually set up to succeed? So I think Becky and a lot of other women, a lot of other assistant coaches in our league see that and are not going to just take the bait to satisfy the PR of a team. With all that being said, like, look, if Becky Hammon does accept the job, I'm going to cry tears of joy. I'm going to truly celebrate it and I'm going to root for her, But it's just like, we know what they're facing. We know what they're up against.
Yeah.
And so it's like, we don't want to see that happen just to see it crash and burn.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's going to be such a monumentous thing whenever it happens. And that if it were to happen now, like my feeling of it now is the way that the Raptors have kind of behaved and framed things over the past few seasons, they're looking at it as a monumental win for them.
Right.
Not to be the ones to do that and to offer that opportunity, not for like what it is and the person who would be taking that position if it was someone like Becky Hammon. On the note of experience, I'll quickly add that when Becky Hammon has more experience now and did even before he was hired than Nick Nurse. NBA experience.
Yeah.
NBA coaching experience than Nick Nurse did when he was hired as head coach. So like throw that out the window.
There's so many current.
Yes.
And in Nick Nurse's case, recently fired head coaches that had less experience than Becky Hammon when they were hired, when she was actually available for that job.
Yeah. I mean, on the note of like the coaching question as a whole, I actually don't mind the idea of hiring an assistant. Like I didn't mean, like, I'm not trying to knock the other assistants that they're interviewing. I think I'm always a huge, like, I just think like that coaching pool has to get so much bigger. Like head coaching jobs in the NBA can start to feel like musical chairs, right? It's just like a reshuffling of white guy to white guy to team for the most part, right? So it's like, how do you change that. You've got to broaden the pool. And how do you do that? You've got to promote more assistant coaches. You've got to bring in international coaches. The Raptors are doing pretty well with that. It just didn't even in terms of their international assistant coaches, in the last few seasons. This season, no. But definitely like last season and the season before. So, all that to say, like, I do like that move. And I'm definitely not against them bringing in somebody who has not been a head coach before. I think you've got to give people opportunities. And especially when you give them those opportunities, it's a lot different than another head coach than like, if like they bring in Bud or something, like if Bud, gets fired and like they bring him in, he has a lot more, there's just like a lot more security in head coaches who have been head coaches for a long time. And I feel like there's less to lose. You kind of want someone who has not a lot to
funny.
lose,
Bud
like,
hasn't been fired yet.
Yeah, I know. I was actually just paused because I was like, did he get fired?
So funny.
I need to make
we
sure.
just assume he's fired.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
I think
so wild how much we
be.
just. Yeah, it's just so funny how we assume he's been fired.
Yeah. But I think you want to give jobs like this, first time jobs like this, to people who are going to make the most of them and have a bit of a chip on their shoulders and do have something to prove. But then within that, have like the full confidence, I think, of the front office that's brought them on. And I do think, like, all these things that we said to the Raptors that have been negative, they are a front office that has shown that they don't mind being patient. Sometimes it's been to their detriment, absolutely. But I think, especially if you're bringing in someone in a role like that for the first time, you got to be patient.
Yeah, I think for this Raptors team, and like, honestly, I'm like, I don't even know if this is the team we're going into next season with or not, right? Like, there could be a lot of roster changes as well between now and then. But I do think, like, when I think about Fred and Pascal, like, they haven't really had like that former player voice. And I think that would be really good for them, actually. It might even be good for Scotty as well. Like, I'm not sure who that is, and I'm not saying like they shouldn't have, after me going on about coaching experience. Yeah.
Like, look around the league at the former coaches, how they fared this year. Not so good. I mean, the former player coaches.
Yeah, not great, but I do think there's something to be said about a former player voice for them.
Yeah.
That I think would be really good. And hey, Becky does fit into that.
She does.
So,
she does. I mean, in that way, yeah, she does tick all the boxes, right? Former player with plenty and ample coaching experience and like relevant coaching experience of like shaping a team and like taking it in a new direction. TBD, I guess.
Yeah. Wild stuff. Well, we made it to 47, probably 48 minutes.
Yeah, we did well.
I found my own after a while, I think, of enough talking. I think maybe that's what
we just had to get fired up. I think.
Yeah. We needed to get fired up about an issue.
Yeah.
So my cough could forget about itself.
Exactly.
Katie, thank you so much for joining me this week. Let everybody know what you're up to and where they can find you on the internet.
You can read and subscribe to Basketball Feelings. That's my Substack. That's at basketballfeelings.com. I just wrote something today on the existential question that's been looming over the Phoenix Suns for 3 seasons now, and what they're going to do if this all doesn't work out. That's at Gaming Society.
God, we didn't even talk about the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, it's okay. The Phoenix Suns and the Denver Nuggets, I legitimately keep forgetting about they're in this too.
And like, there's huge stars in that series.
Yeah, but it's forgettable, and I kind of touch on that. There's, I think, reasons why, that they don't seem as exciting or compelling. Or you can follow me on Twitter at whatevs, WTEVS.
Well, thank you so much for joining me this week. Thank you for everyone who put up with my cough. Really appreciate you. Everyone watching on YouTube who's going to see me mute my mic and like cover my face. Thank you so much for tuning in. I pray I will be 100% next week, and we'll catch you then. Okay, take care. Bye.